Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's Late Night with the Gringo, and yes, we have a sort of a special episode because we saw Snow White. We're going to give you the full breakdown and review, and we cover politics a lot, but we also cover pop culture in this channel, so we decided let's start out with the big one. Yep, Snow White 2025 hit theaters here in Mexico, and we went and saw the first showing that was available, and the theater was completely empty except for the three of us, which is me, my son, my wife. So we have three different opinions to give to you, all varying, widely varying. So it's an interesting movie to review because of so much history behind it right now and so much context given behind it from YouTube channels that comment on this stuff both in a negative way and in a positive way. Look, we've seen the movie. I'm going to tell you the good. I'm going to tell you the bad and what I think. Spoiler warning, because we're going to talk in length about this film. So if you don't want this spoiled for you, come back in a little bit, and we'll be talking politics. But I am going to get into that, and you're free to get into whatever you want to get into. So just spoiler alert to everyone: we will be talking about specific things that happen in the movie because you have to with the history of this film and the production of this film.
Yeah, and to understand the points we're making.
I can't call it the dumpster fire that people were predicting that it would be.
Exactly.
It's not the dumpster fire that I was expecting. And there are parts of it that I said, well, okay, that's pretty cool. Now, before I get into mine, there's a third opinion that we had, because, we have all the opinions of all the people who saw the premiere. And that was just me, my wife, and my kid, like I said, in here, my son.
Which is fortunate,
Yeah, and my wife loved it. She thought it was a 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
9 out of 10. She's 10 out of 10 at a certain part, but then they got into some, I think, the singing
weird
and
stuff,
the weird little kind of odd points.
But she loved it. She loved everything about it, really, and almost everything about it. She thought it was fabulous. She thought it was Disney. She thought it was Snow White. She thought it was how Rachel Zegler played the part. Thought it was magnificent. There were some things that I thought, okay, that looked cool, and that was pretty cool. Okay, I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you the three things I really, really enjoyed about the film. First of all,
we kind of agree on this, so I'm not going to speak out of turn. I'm going to let you say, because we have a pretty similar understanding.
Sure, no problem. Gal Gadot, or Gadot, as the Evil Queen, not her singing. Now, her song wasn't that bad. It was unnecessary, but it wasn't that bad. But her portrayal of the Evil Queen was spot on, and she stole every scene that she was in. Definitely, she did that role right. As we said before, Rachel Zegler, like her, don't like her, whatever she says on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, whatnot. I certainly have issues with a lot of the things she said and how she acts out in public, her persona, who she is. I don't think she's a very likable person in real life, from what I see. Can't take away the idea that she can sing. I didn't think her acting was as good as my wife thought it was. I thought it was a little stiff, a little stale, a little like more pantomime of the original. The other thing I really liked was a lot of the CGI that wasn't sort of advertised as a big deal was like the critters, the deer, the bunnies, the hedgehogs, all that stuff, all the woodland creatures was really well done. It was actually, they were cute to look at. It was kind of fun to look at those things. And then some of the other CGI, you move away from the dwarfs, okay? I still have issues with the dwarfs. Let it go right now. But there's a scene where she's running away from the woodsman, the huntsman, the 1937 animated film, the trees are grabbing her and whatnot. She's getting her, right? They did that animation really well. But the best animation, the best, I think, sequence for me that I enjoyed the most was when the Evil Queen transformed to the old witch. They did that incredibly well. It looked incredibly cool. Dipping the apple in the poison and bringing it up, and just the animation of that apple and the way they kind of did that was just, I thought, was really creative, and I really enjoyed seeing that. The difference between this film and the 1937 film is that the 1937 film you watch, and there's some dialogue and there's some talking, but the thing about a classic Disney animated film is that it really shows you and lets you experience the world on an enormous visual basis. This film did not allow you to enjoy the enormous visual basis because it was too busy trying to explain to you what happened in the past, what's happening now on the screen, what's going to happen. It's just so much exposition. It really made the pacing of the film. I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes. About that, it felt 3 hours long because it just slowed itself down. It just had points in it where it just stopped talking. The parts where there was some action or some movement or whatnot, cool. You feel like, you kind of get into that. The songs Whistle While You Work is there. Hi Ho.
Hi ho.
Hi Ho is there. They changed that up a little bit, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. And do a good job with like keeping the originals as original as they can.
Yeah.
They make some small changes, obviously, to freshen it up.
But the other songs were
Oh yeah, I just
terrible. Not I don't want to say terrible, unforgettable. And I couch this as this, you know, I do like musicals. If you've been with me on this channel for a little while, you know that I saw Wicked, loved it, thought it should have won Best Picture. If you've been with me for a couple of years, you know that I loved Wonka. You know that I love the Rocky Horror Picture Show and things like that. Oklahoma. I love musicals that are done really well. You know, when I left Wicked or when I listen to the Wonka soundtrack sometimes just out of the blue because I think it's such a good soundtrack and such so well done and so part of the story. These songs did not stick in my head. They're totally forgettable. They're already out. If you ask me like, what was the song? Can you repeat? I can't. But when I left Wicked or when I left Wonka or when I leave other musicals that I see and I'm like, okay, those were really well done and the songs were really well crafted. They're there, right? And you can remember it, even the rhythm or maybe a couple chorus lines. You know, but this one, no. It's not that they were poorly executed. Like I said, Zegler could sing. Gal Gadot sang pretty well, but I didn't think she could sing that well either. The prince, well, not the prince. What are we calling him now? The thief?
The thief, Jonathan.
Jonathan, the thief, who's not the prince, but he's now a thief because we can't have a prince in this.
Captain Thief?
Captain, he's the head of the thieves. He sang, and that, honestly, for him, I didn't think that was like, oh, this guy is not really, I mean.
He's okay.
He's okay. He's serviceable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the music is just forgettable. That's the best word I can give out. It's forgettable. And so a lot of it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. It just doesn't add to it. It's just, we're going to put in a random singing and dancing here. It just doesn't move the plot along. It doesn't add anything magical. It doesn't add anything that's enjoyable because it just doesn't, it's just there.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't need to be there. It just actually stalls the story for a few moments when you're like, okay, well, let's get on to the next thing, you know? And there were a couple points where it was like it slowed itself down so much that I was like, I had to shift in my seat because I didn't want to fall asleep. And you're absolutely right. When you see the scenes with the CGI dwarfs, you know that there were some creative decisions made for not just to add the dwarfs, but to really change the story. We're going to get into that. But the first 20 minutes or 15, I'll be generous, 15 minutes.
Oh, no, 20. Say 20, please. It's not 15.
It was all singing and exposition about the backstory of Snow White. They tell you why they call her Snow White. It's not because, as the German original fairy tale says, or the anime, her skin is white as snow. No, it's not. They changed it so they could, and so they always had in mind that they weren't good. They were gonna put a person of color in this role because they built it into the script. So she's a little girl. Her father's the king. Her mother's the queen. All right. They bake apple pies for their peasant people.
Oh, you didn't even tell her why they were born, why she was called Snow White.
I'm getting there.
This is all before we get to the apple pie. Hold on.
So they call her Snow White because she was born in a snowstorm.
How creative, boys. Also,
well, you know, the happy kingdom, mother, father, queen and king. Mother gets sick, dies. Father's sad. All of a sudden shows up this other woman. And she's got this little magical powers, you know, but she ends up marrying the king and becoming the stepmother of Snow White. She lies to the king, sends him off to the southern regions because she thinks there's going to be a war. He never returns. He's dead, basically. And so she takes over. And that's how the evil queen took over and then keeps Snow White in the castle as a slave, basically. One day, as the people are all starving, as you see her grow from this little girl into the Rachel Zegler version of Snow White, the evil queen kind of becomes a dictator. The people are starving. She turns all the farmers into warriors. They're all wearing armor with swords and all that. That's her army, you know. Okay, cool. Now, Jonathan, who is not the prince, he's not a prince. He's a thief. He's the head of the thieves, actually. Lives in the woods. Oh, yes.
Well, they're not normal thieves.
They're not normal thieves, right? He shows up and he's stealing potatoes. He gets caught by Snow White, gets caught by the evil queen. And she basically sentenced him to death, basically to tie him to the gates of the castle so he freezes to death with no coat, no shoes. Snow White rescues him, lets him go, gives him a piece of bread, see you later, adios. He goes back to the woods, barefoot. The evil queen sees this, and she's like, we must kill, you know, she does mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Well, turns out, you know, Snow White is fairer than she is, so gotta kill Snow White.
Escalated quickly, but I mean, technically true to the original.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So first she sends Snow White, says, "You're going to go gather apples.
Like you did in the
Like
past.
you used to do as a kid. First time out of the castle in probably a decade." Sends the huntsman with her. Huntsman's got the orders to kill her and carve her heart out and bring it back in a box.
Was that in the original? The whole box? I don't remember that.
I think it was. Again, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm going to go with yeah, sure.
I'm going to hope it was, because I was like, that. If not, that's excessive.
I mean, it's a German fairy tale. It sounds like something the Germans would come up with.
Yeah.
Carve your heart out, put it in a box.
Yeah, that's fair.
He can't go through it. It screams at her to run away. She runs, and that's how she gets through the forest, and the little woodland creatures find her. And that's, again, it was a cool little scene there as she's running through. The animation was really cool.
Meanwhile, she's already sung probably 4 different times.
Oh, yeah.
All of this.
There's already been
4 or 5 musicals.
Oh my God. Like I said,
by the time you get to the running in the woods, you're already done with singing. We didn't even get to the original songs at that point, did we?
No.
How many original songs are there in the in the
3?
first movie?
I think
3, right?
Yeah.
There's Hi Ho.
With someday my prince will come. Will not.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no prince. And then you had Whistle While You Work.
Yep. So the huntsman goes back. He's put in a dungeon because he didn't do his job, because instead of her heart in the box, he put an apple. So Queen's pissed. Snow White is missing. The woodland creatures bring her to the dwarf's house, and she falls asleep on their beds, collapses, and then you get the dwarves in their mines, which is again another little cool sequence of them kind of thing. But
I like that sequence.
Yeah, it was.
They made the mines pretty magical.
Yeah, the mines were pretty cool.
The gems were cool.
I wanted to spend more time there.
Yeah,
I was like, oh,
that was my favorite part.
But they discover her, and you get that whole rigmarole where how to live with her, how to keep her safe. They know who she is. They know who Princess Snow White is. Meanwhile, you're probably wondering, okay, Gringo, what happened to the original dwarves? The ones that were in that famous picture that everybody made fun of. They called them the DEI dwarves.
I'm not wrong. Those were supposed to be the dwarves, no?
Those were supposed to be the dwarves.
Okay. Because I started to maybe think for a moment when we watched the film, I was like, oh, maybe they were always intended to be this and not that. Yeah. But no, I guess we're wrong.
So Snow White, she's a little bit of a girl boss. She's going to go out, got to find her father. Thinks he's still alive at that point.
See if the bandits know anything about him.
Yeah, doesn't know nothing about him. Runs into Jonathan in the woods. So the two of them have a song where they kind of belittle each other,
Princess Problems.
Yeah, Princess Problem. He's calling her a first world, basically Princess Problem, kind of victim. And she's basically belittling him as a guy. The song doesn't really do anything for you. They meet then you meet up with the DEI bandits. They're still in the movie. They're not the dwarves. Jonathan is the head of those bandits, and they look exactly like they did in that picture. There's no costume change. I mean, it's hilariously out of place.
Yeah, and that says a lot because the town and everything else is pretty colorful.
Yeah,
and they stand out like a sore thumb. It's like,
and they don't act very well either. The acting was not good in that group. Anyways, so
you notice something though about them?
What?
They were given a very reduced role. In this version.
Extremely reduced.
Because I think they had a lot more. I think every time you see all the dwarves, that's what they're supposed to be doing.
So what happens is the knights show up, the army of the queen shows up, and they're like, "Where's Snow White?" And Snow White runs off, and the DEI army, who basically have like one sword, a crossbow, and a stick, are going to be like, "We're going to battle twice as many guys in full armor and swords," and they actually hold her own against them. Then Snow White shows back up again, and here I am, and tricks them and all that stuff, and they all get away, except, and here's where I think they really made a change of story. One of the army of the queen shoots a crossbow aimed at Snow White, and Jonathan steps in and takes the crossbow to the chest. Now, I think in the original script, I take Rachel Zegler at her word. There's no princess coming to save the day. She's going to be a leader. No one's saving her.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
I think he was supposed to die. I think that was supposed to be his death scene, because the next thing you know is that the DEI bandits, Snow White, are carrying Jonathan back to the dwarves, the CGI dwarves, because Doc is Doc, and even though he's not a real doctor, and the guy's got a crossbow literally right through his friggin' chest.
But while he's bleeding out,
they sing another song while he's bleeding out on the table.
Weird.
It's a short song.
Short song, but they still sing. They bring him in. Doc brings him in and does some sort of 10-minute surgery, and Jonathan just comes walking back out like, no problem.
No problem.
It's merely a flesh wound, you know? And I'm like, he was supposed to die. In my mind, I'm going, he was supposed to die, right? And so then they have more singing and dancing and all that together.
Actually, did you notice when he was in the woods before they carried him off, they all were kind of like, there's nothing we can do. I think that was part of the original script, but they cut it there and just decided to do a reshoot at the very end to be like, we'll carry him off.
Again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure
Jonathan
was supposed to die.
The way the cut is,
it's Hollywood, baby.
Yeah. It just feels like he was just supposed to die in the woods there. And that was it for him.
And then, okay, so he's revived. Now they're all gung-ho. But then the queen learns that, okay, she's still alive. So that's when she goes into her full transformation mode, and she's going to poison. Because Snow White's determined to go find her father, bring him back, and restore him as the rightful king. Before she can do that, evil queen, evil wicked witch shows up with the poison apple, gives it to her. It takes forever. I'm like, just bite the freaking apple.
Yeah, just bite the apple.
Just bite the apple. I mean, they're trying to draw it out this is long. I'm like, we know she bites the apple. Bite the apple. And there she goes, right? Then you got the dwarves. Now, I'm sure this was added in. I am positive this is added in. Then you get the CGI dwarves, just like in the original, all around her. She's laying on this big rock, unconscious. A day goes by, and Jonathan shows up.
After pulling a prison with the huntsman.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Captured.
At that point, Jonathan was in prison with the evil queen, and he and the huntsman actually ripped their chains out of the walls to go find Snow White. And apparently, everybody knows the secret way out of the castle that the evil queen uses, because the huntsman tells Jonathan, yeah, just use the secret passage the evil queen always uses. It'll take it. All right, I guess not.
She always uses it. Everyone knows this. Common fact. It's only a secret.
I guess it's not a secret. So he shows up and kisses her, and she wakes up. And I am sure, again, going with Miss Rachel Zegler's comments from 2 or 3 years ago, that's not supposed to be in there. And I'm pretty sure they put that in there after all the backlash. Again, I could be wrong. I'm just going on what my gut is telling me from watching the film and seeing how it was cut, edited, and then what was added in.
Plus the CGI was there too, the dwarves. So that just tells me more about that. I almost want to say that the apple was kind of re-added in there, because think about it. If she bites the apple, then you have to have a prince or the Jonathan show up to save her.
I have a theory. A theory. Because the queen makes it a point to say when she's reading the spell, the only cure for this sleeping death apple is true love. So my thing was, the original plan was not to have somebody kiss her who's there, a guy kiss her to wake her up, because, women, feminism, all that, right?
Yeah.
The real plan was for her to have some sort of dream sequence where she remembers her mother and father and true love of family, true love of leader. You know what I mean? Something like that.
True love of the kingdom.
True love of being a leader or something, and she wakes up. That is something I could see happening. That is how I think it should have gone, because, the evil queen's still alive, and it's not like now you completely are going to deviate now from the original. So Snow White decides, I'm just going to march into the town and confront the evil queen. And she does that. Literally just marches in, and people start singing, and they're all happy to see her and whatnot. And you're thinking, okay, evil magical queen, this is going to be a tough battle. Literally walks up to her and says, you're done. We don't want you here anymore. And the evil queen's like, okay. For a second, I'm like, all right. Well, then she pulls out a dagger and she goes to stab Snow White. But one of the magical bandits, who's the greatest man with the crossbow in all the kingdom, shoots the knife out of the evil queen's hand. It lands, and for some reason it turns into ash and disappears. I guess it was a magical dagger that is affected that way. So then the queen is like, fine, I'll leave. And she turns back and goes back into the castle, grabs her staff, smashes the magic mirror. She turns to ash, is sucked in by the mirror. The mirror reforms itself, and there's Snow White standing there. Okay, there we go. And then you get the final dance scene, dance and song scene where everybody's dressed in white like it's a Diddy party. So they're singing, dancing, and there's a lot of narration throughout the film, and you finally realize that it's dopey because his relationship with Snow White gave him the courage to speak. All that narration that you hear, it's actually dopey narrating the whole thing to a group of kids, and magical bandits are standing there as well, and that's it. That's how it ended. That was it was a mess. It was a little messy. It was a lot messy, actually. Here's the thing. If you really do want to go see this film, go in it and forget about all the crap that's surrounding it. If you want to go in and try to enjoy it, you got to Just like I went in there, I said, you know what? I don't like Rachel Zegler as a person. From a lot of the political stuff she said, I think it's mean. I think it's nasty. And you got to put that. You got to kind of put that aside and go, okay, I want to give this film a fair shot. And like I said, there's some things that I really liked about the film. It wasn't a lot, but if you're going to give it a fair shot, you got to. If there's people getting on and they're saying this thing's a complete dumpster fire, they're not really being authentic. And I know that's going to sell more. That's going to click more. That's going to get more views. I get it. I do YouTube. I know how it works. But I don't want to tell you something just to get a click. I just want to tell you this is what I really thought of the film. It really wasn't entertaining for me. I didn't feel like when I left the movie, I said, well, I really wasn't that entertained.
At the very least.
And as you were talking here, I'm going through plot points in my head and going, that ending really bothered me. I'm like, well, if the queen had no powers to back up her words, why didn't anyone listen to her? Why did they let her be that way? She just like literally, I mean, it was like Snow White just walking up to her going, you're done.
Yeah.
And the queen going, okay.
But if you actually know the history behind this film, or even just a little bit, you understand where those cuts are.
Yeah.
And you really see, oh, they went back and reshot a lot of this movie.
Oh,
Not just a ton of this movie.
If the CGI, if you just take the CGI dwarves section of the film,
That's like half.
I think it's more. I think it's like 65, 7, almost, yeah, I think it's like 60% of the film has been reshot. Never mind what else they might have reshot to accommodate the inclusion of the CGI dwarves and change the story.
Never mind cut, because they had to go back to the original. They tried to go back to the original as best as they could, which I give them credit. They at least understood they were wrong and tried to right the shit. Granted, too late.
Somewhere there's a director's cut on the floor of this thing, and who knows what the original was supposed to be, and who knows where to see what the original script was supposed to
I've
be.
been burned.
I'm sure. Yeah, someone will leak it. Someone will leak it sooner or later and be like, okay, this is what it was supposed to be. But yeah, that's Snow White. I mean, we'll see how it does at the box office. We'll track it this weekend. With that, thanks to everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. From south of the border, we'll see you Saturday night. I'm still your reluctant gringo. This is my son. Salud.
Salud.
And
Al
Al Huevo.